I can't imagine as the ANC, like in 1994, as I conclude, we came in government, we said that we'll give people RDP, we'll give people houses for free, everything for free. We had what we call reconstruction and development program. When we got into government, that apartheid government left us with a debt. We had now to decide, what are we going to do? We said to our people, we'll give them free houses and all of that and everything else, education and so on. How are we going to achieve this with this debt before us, with a bankrupt economy that we actually had? Our response to that was clear, which COSATU doesn't like. We had to achieve macroeconomic stability for the country. We are in that cycle, albeit differently, that our economy is not performing well, and we need to maintain the balance of meeting the basic needs of the people, but at the same time, get the resources to basically meet those basic needs. As the ANC, we wouldn't agree that certain things, of course, there will be changes, but must be done away with. Like others say, the DA says, cut, 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 cut. We don't believe in cutting.
The failures of Gauteng municipalities will be a key focus on President Cyril Ramaphosa's mind as he engages with the Gauteng provincial government. All municipalities of the economic hub of the country are faced with crumbling infrastructure from roads, traffic lights, lack of water provision and a huge migration rate into the city. Johannesburg Executive Mayor Dada Morero, whose council will engage with the president, has highlighted that the funding model of local government needs to change in order for municipalities to be able to fulfill their mandates.
There are challenges in terms of infrastructure indeed, especially in our cities. And in this case, I would respond about Johannesburg in particular, where we are faced with road infrastructure challenges which require us to be able to raise enough capital to attend to those. You know that from time to time, for us to support our budgets, our budget is funded from three main sources. One being our own money, which constitute about 70% of what we must raise from the surpluses of water and electricity and rates and taxes. The other percentage will be from borrowing, and the remainder is grants. And yes, our revenue has been shrinking over the years because the model of local government was established on the assumptions that the surpluses of water and electricity will finance municipalities to a large extent. But with people now moving to alternative energy sources and water sources by doing boreholes and so on, we have seen that, of course, our revenues are shrinking, which requires us to rethink and reposition financing of municipalities.
Welcome back. Now, this week, President Cyril Ramaphosa hosted a two-day oversight imbizo in Eastern Cape, along with members of the cabinet. The president chaired engagements between the national executive as well as the provincial counterparts. The Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Minister Velinkosini Hlabisa labeled the province, the Eastern Cape, as the poorest or poor in the country, while the province is hailed as the fastest growing ports and automotive manufacturing industry. Premier Oscar Mabuyane has said poverty and unemployment continues to plague communities. Now, recently, the Auditor General's scathing report on the state of the province highlighted what was a bleak picture of the lack of accountability within the government. But why is the Eastern Cape continuously failing? Let's speak to Public Service Accountability Monitor Program Manager at Rhodes University, Zukiswa Kota, who joins me now. Zukiswa, thank you so much for the time. Appreciated then this morning. What did you make of this visit? One could say that the issues in and around the Eastern Cape have actually been known for the longest time and nothing had been done previously. So what does this visit actually do?
Thanks, Sarabile. The visit is, from an oversight perspective, is an important one for what it signifies, or its symbolism from that perspective. But you're right, there are significant, deeply embedded problems and challenges from a socio-economic perspective in the Eastern Cape that haven't been adequately addressed for many, many years. So I think the questions are more about what are the objectives of the visit, and it's not just about a single visit, because no single visit would resolve these issues.
Is there perhaps a starting point then you feel could be at place then following this visit, which, as you said, is only one, but should be one of many?
I think the starting point is, we at the Public Service Accountability Monitor have over several years looked quite closely at the provincial strategic plans, at provincial and departmental plans, essentially around a range of factors, including, aspects of fiscal management, aspects of development, aspects of education, and all the range of things that create growth, create development and progress in any context. And what we see really are repetitions of, on the one hand, recognition of the issues. So you're right, certainly none of these issues are novel, none of them are new. But by that same token, a simple failure to very often implement even the simplest of plans that are put in place. So the beginning point we would argue is to first of all determine, is it a leadership issue? And I think most of those questions have been answered. You referred to the AG's report. Year in, year out, the municipal audit outcomes and some of the special reports that the Auditor General's office issue indicate that at the core of it very often is leadership, not just in the Eastern Cape, of course, but certainly in the Eastern Cape and in particular at the municipal level, leadership is a fundamental problem.
Hey folks, Lachlan here again, speaking to you as always from just outside of Durban, South Africa. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about how I believe the African National Congress actually openly hates poor people. And in South Africa, that usually means poor black people. Before I start, as always, I must tell you that I have a severe physical disability which confines me to a wheelchair and affects the way I move and speak. If that is too much for you to handle, click away now. Now, onto the topic of today's video. It's always been funny to me, well, at least ever since I became politically aware, that the ANC and its members like to refer to themselves as the saviors of the South African people and a liberation movement. Because if you look at the way they behave, it's very clear that ANC leadership, particularly at the national level, openly hates the poor. What's been making a lot of news lately is the controversy around the scheduled VAT increase. VAT being value-added tax, which everyone in this country pays every time they buy anything or do any kind of transaction involving money. People for months, whether it's political parties or civil society activist groups, have been trying to stop the ANC from raising the VAT rate for the sake of the poor. But the ANC has been adamant and steadfast in its belief that the VAT rate needed to be raised because, and I quote, I believe it was Fikile Mbalula, who said, the ANC does not believe in cutting. Now, I say that the ANC hates the poor based purely on how they live and how their rhetoric is in direct conflict with what they actually do. Recently, current President Cyril Ramaphosa blamed the ANC's failure to deliver infrastructure and services to rural communities in South Africa on apartheid, which is standard at this point. Everything they fail at, they blame apartheid for. But this time, he also added climate change. Now, I almost fell out of my chair when I heard him blame climate change for the ANC's failure to help uplift poor communities, because it's as if he truly wants us to believe that weather patterns are the cause of corruption and incompetence. The ANC is now fairly open in its hatred for the poor because they blame white monopoly capital, apartheid and colonialism for the inequality in this country while living like kings, ironically making use of all the white institutions and benefits that they tell their voters are so evil. These are the people traveling in fancy convoys of European cars protected by police and government security as they move from place to place. They fly business class up and down the country and outside of our borders, and they spend thousands on hotels and restaurant meals while starvation and poverty are among the highest concerns of the average black South African. They claim to stand for the poor and to want to create a better life for all, but in practice, what they have done is simply to create a better life for themselves, their families, and their friends. If a white person like me criticizes these things, we are simply dismissed as racist. And if a black person does the same and speaks out about the corruption, incompetence, and criminality of the ANC and its allies, they are called sellouts and clever blacks. Now, I mentioned how Figila Mbalula said that the ANC does not believe in cutting, and how Ramaphosa blamed their failure to provide services on apartheid and climate change. But these are simply two examples. If you look back to the days where Jacob Zuma was president of this country, the downfall, at least in modern times, really began with him, because it was under Jacob Zuma that a system of state capture was instituted, through which he and his allies, mostly also politicians, but corrupt business people as well, were able to loot every aspect of the state for their own benefit. Jacob Zuma is one of the most treasonous leaders in South African history, yet I don't believe that he will ever face prison time or any kind of adequate punishment for his behavior because he is simply too well connected. After all, the massive riots that took place in July 2021 here in KZN and also to a lesser extent out in Gauteng happened simply because Jacob Zuma was arrested because he didn't show up for court. So we now live in a world where it's very obvious that the political class are immune to the law. They do not answer to anyone. They are not accountable for anything, and they will never apologize for how their actions harm the poorest of the poor because they simply don't care. And what saddens me most is that still to this day, the votes of poor black people can be bought with a t-shirt and a food parcel. And the same empty promises the ANC has been making since it took power in 94. We live in this never-ending cycle where the vast majority of people in South Africa are too ignorant to see that it helps the politicians and directly benefits them if most black people remain in poverty. If you look at policies like black economic empowerment, for example, black economic empowerment is a legislative framework which was supposed to redress the economic imbalances caused by apartheid. In reality, what it's done is to benefit a small black elite of politically connected business people and politicians themselves who have used it to manipulate the tender process and get themselves awarded lucrative contracts. And that's just one element of the corruption facilitated by the ANC. There are now mafias in almost every sector of public life in South Africa, whether it's the transport industry, the construction industry, or energy generation. And these mafias are known to exist and known to threaten people and to control and to hamper large projects which would benefit all South Africans, but they throw spanners in the works and they basically loot these projects for their own benefit. And they don't care what the consequences, broadly speaking, will be, because they know they'll never be touched, because the leaders of these mafias are all politically connected, if not politicians themselves. So this is why I firmly believe that not only is the ANC no longer a liberation movement, if it ever was, but ANC politicians are now open and honest about their hatred and disdain for poor black South Africans. They will leave you to die in the gutter while they live in mansions and drive fancy BMWs and Mercedes Benzes. These people do not care and they never will. As always, I hope you find some value in this content. Look after yourselves, take care of each other, put South Africa first, and for now, farewell.